Hey guys, my name's Lonnie. I'm a real alcoholic. And so we left off with this little blonde, man, and we hit it off pretty good. She was beautiful. Even after having four kids already, she was still really, really beautiful. She's a Christian lady, 5 years sobriety. Um this was it. This was a match made in AA. And so we got together. She ended up pregnant right away. I swear, this woman, you wash clothes with her, and she's gonna end up pregnant. But we got together, and she completed me. And I realized, looking back, that this group in Las Vegas, I had gone through the steps and I had this spiritual experience, but that group was what had completed me. And I think that's what my sponsor meant when she said that I was not ready. I think she could see that I was still relying on human power to complete me. I knew it wasn't going to relieve my alcoholism. I did my things to seek God about that, but I was still using human beings so that I could be a person, so that I could be whole, so that I could be validated, what have you, right? And so and so she got pregnant, and eventually we got married. And I'm going to AA. I'm still carrying this message. But my home life was miserable, man. My home life was just it was crazy. We started the fighting. We started the AA fighting. Well, why are you not going to that meeting? Well, why are you sponsoring that person? Well, you need to do an inventory. You need to look at your character defects. On and on and on. And it just turned into this constant battle back and forth of who was more AA and who was more right. Man, I sent this woman back to Vegas so that she could go through the steps with my sponsor, with Helen. And she did, man. I flew her to Vegas. She went through the steps. She come back. She had an awesome spiritual experience. Things went well for a time, but even in our spirituality, we were fighting um about things that were just ridiculous. And it was crazy. I was going to college at the time. I was carrying 18 hours in college. I was working two jobs, trying to support her. She was pregnant, trying to support what I could with the other kids. And it got to be quite a lot, man. I ended up dropping out of college. I started going back to work in the oil field, and I had just abandoned all my dreams for this family, for this great relationship that I had been looking for almost all my life. And I mean, it was so crazy, guys. I let me bring out some of her faults first, right? Besides the when's the last time you had sponsored somebody, right? Besides the well, you're not praying enough. Besides her pointing out all the defects in my program, man, it was so bad that after we got married, we were like in a church parking lot arguing before service. And at that time, we were going to this non denominational, real spirit filled, tongue talking, lay hands on each other type church. And she threw her ring, her wedding ring, at me in the parking lot. And I mean, I'm so selfish. I'm digging around the gravel for the wedding ring. I actually had to go back a couple times before I found it. But she divorced me right there in the parking lot. Took off her wedding ring and just threw it at me. And I can tell you guys, I honestly don't know why. I don't know what I did. I don't know what was going on. Half the stuff she was bitching at me about, I had no idea where this shit was coming from. So it was pretty miserable. I'm gonna tell you, for the next 5 years, that was our life. Just a constant bickering, constant arguing. Then the makeup would happen, and that would be all lovely for a week or two, and then back to the throwing pots and pans at me. And I mean, it was crazy, guys. But on my end, I can tell you, I was so full of self righteousness. I was spiritually drunk, I like to call it. Um, I had this spiritual experience and it was for real. It really was when I was in Vegas. And it shot me into a world that I never believed was possible. But at the same time, I lost track. And I'll tell you guys later in another segment where I lost track. But I was spiritually drunk. I was a spiritual nut. I saw a sign one time on the front of this church that says, God wants spiritual fruit. He doesn't want religious nuts. And basically, that's what I was, both me and her. I mean, we were going through the motions, we were going to our services twice a week. We were sponsoring people, we had meetings at our house, we were going to other people's houses. And but deep down inside our private life, it was crazy. I was so bad off that I was physically and mentally abusive, not only to her but to the kids also. And excuse me. And that's a hard situation to admit, that in all my righteousness, in all my what I thought was spirituality, I was a complete asshole, man. I was dictative. Um, it, I had no love. Okay. For me, there was a difference. I was saying and doing the right things concerning knowledge of the big book, knowledge of other spiritual stuff I was reading, but my life damn sure wasn't showing it. This 12 step talks about practice these principles in all our affairs. And I had gotten away from that. I had missed it. For some reason, it was just a complete spiritual make believe. And that's the big term that the book uses. It talks about some of us will get into this spiritual make believe, and that's not what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is looking for. Um, it is looking for a real conscious contact with a power greater than ourselves that will solve our problem. And of course, my problem was my selfishness and my character defects, but I was so spiritually high, I wasn't looking at that anymore. Basically, I had stopped doing steps 10 and 11 the way the book suggested to do it. I thought steps 10 and 11 were you have a spiritual experience and then you grow and you join the ashram, or you join the church, or you join the synagogue, whatever your system of faith is, and then you study that and you grow and you gain all this spiritual knowledge. And I thought that's what the book wanted me to do. And that's what I was doing, and it really led me crazy. The abuse, the mental and the physical abuse in the family, it really got to a point where I was so ashamed of myself that I attempted suicide in sobriety, and I was just utterly lost. I was a complete mess. I could not understand why the people of Alcoholics Anonymous were turning against me. I couldn't understand why I couldn't make friends in the church. I couldn't understand that if I had this great spiritual experience, why did I have this crazy ass family and this crazy ass wife? I just felt completely abandoned, and the abuses that I was doing, um, here I was, a supposed, good spiritual person, but yet I knew in my mind, I knew in my heart that the way I was treating this family was not right. It was not the will of God. And I couldn't change it. I couldn't change my anger. I couldn't do it. And I got real depressed. And I did. I attempted a real suicide, and it was almost successful. After that, man, I just kind of lost interest in AA. I started copping resentments with AA. AA was talking bad about my wife. AA was talking bad about me. AA men were talking to my sponsees about man, you don't have to be going through the book that way. And I was taking people through the book the way I was shown, but my actions outside of that were completely opposite. And so I started catching these resentments, man, and finally I gave up. I says, you know what? To hell with AA. Y'all people are not spiritual enough. Y'all don't know what y'all are doing. And I'm just gonna go carry the message on the streets, and I'm gonna continue my big spiritual movement with the church, right? And so I did. I broke away from AA. I just did strictly church stuff. And I continued. I did. I tried to carry a message. I'd go to the streets, and I would try to find drunks. I had got a job. I quit a good oil field job to work at a homeless shelter. And I was leading AA meetings there, and I was doing Bible studies there. And I was thinking, once again, just still thinking I was doing the right godly thing. I had placed myself, for some reason, I was above AA, and I was above these church people, and I had the answers. Well, to make a long, long story short, uh, by 1996, I left Alcoholics Anonymous, tried to do just church, and my relationship with my wife got so bad that I knew deep down inside that for my sanity, for hers, for the sake of the kids, we had to separate. And so we did. And I had relapsed in that time. Once again, a little short relapse. Maybe I think it was a night one time, and then the next weekend it was a couple nights. And she put up with it, and she wasn't real mad about it. But the craziness got to the point where I was like, God, this is just unreal. I got to get out of this. And I filed for divorce, and I did. I got out of that relationship. And during that divorce, some criminal charges were brought up against me of a situation that happened probably around 1993 that everybody knew about. The situation was handled, but it was still some leverage to use against me. And so I ended up with a criminal charge going through this divorce, and that really just ended it all, man. I just broke down, and I quit this whole God thing completely. No AA, no church. That was it. If God didn't provide for me what I was looking for, I was going to play with the devil. And speaking of the devil, that was another misconception I had. All this turmoil I was going through. Oh, it was the devil. It was the devil. The devil's picking on me. The devil's trying to mess with your kids. The devil's messing with your wife. It was the devil. It was the devil. No, man. Looking back on it, it was character defects, is what it was. I was crazy. I wasn't doing daily inventories, watching for my character defects, asking God to remove them. No, I was just this nasty, rotten evangelical reformer is what I was. And it's sad because the big book warns us about that. The big book warns us about this spiritual high, this spiritual make believe, and it tells us with some proper training, this will calm down, this will even out. Well, for me, it didn't, because I wasn't following this program anymore. I was just doing my own thing, and so it got to the point where we had got a divorce. I had these criminal charges on me. I decided to go ahead and go play with the devil instead. And I did, man. I took off, and it was back to drinking. And it didn't take long. It was drinking every day. Um, I I had this one girlfriend that after a couple months I realized she told me that she was a prostitute, and she was a legitimate working girl, wasn't a street hooker or meth head whore or whatever we call these ladies. She was a legitimate prostitute making big money, And so, once again, I was so distraught as a person that I didn't care. You know, she completed me. She provided what I needed to be a whole person. And if I had to put up with her being a prostitute, well, that was no problem. Well, the problem came was after about a few months of this relationship, I wanted more out of a relationship, and she really didn't. So I got another girlfriend, and this this woman caught me with this other girlfriend and burned my house down with me in it. And I'm thinking to myself, how the hell does a prostitute get jealous? You know? And so my little trailer house was burned down. My roommate barely got out, man. His hair was on fire when he jumped out the back door. It was crazy. But we survived that, and I continued my drinking. I ended up in another town with a friend of mine that owned a strip club, and so I did some business dealings over there. I had this knack where I just show up at a bar with $2 and I could get one beer and I would drink all night. That was the type of personality I had. But after a few months of that, I was into selling cocaine. That was my living at the time. And so I was about to graduate craps dealing school. I was going to be a craps dealer at a local casino, and I was waiting on my security clearance. And so I had kind of laid off the dealing of the dope, but I ran short of money. So one night, man, I made one more big lick. I'm going to sell some dope, and I made my lick, and I was up all night, and one of my friends early in the evening, he said, "Lonnie, man, you're trash. Why don't you come home with us?" I said, "No, man, I still got some 8 balls I gotta sell. I'm gonna get off of this, and then that's gonna be it. I'm gonna get my job at the casino, and I'm gonna have a new life." Well, the next morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm driving to my little hideaway girlfriend's house, and I had dropped a cigarette. I was speeding real fast. I had dropped a cigarette. I reached down, and when I looked up, the traffic had come to like almost a stop. It had slowed down quite a bit. I was doing about 70. The traffic backed down to about 30 real quick. I ended up rear-ending this little truck. I pushed the truck off the road, guys, and I looked in my rearview mirror because I swerved to get out of the traffic, and I looked in my rearview mirror. I saw the truck flipping, and I saw the driver ejected. And I knew it was bad. I did not know that the man died. I did not know that his wife would be in critical condition, but I knew it was bad. I knew I was done for. And the alcoholic in me, okay, being as fucked up as I am, I tried to run. That I was not facing that. There was no way I was going to face it. I knew I couldn't face it in the condition I was in. I was caught. I was going to end up in jail, and I just continued going. And I made it to the next exit. I got off the interstate, and sure enough, that truck I was driving was all banged up, and it broke down. And so the state police showed up, and I tried to blow it off a little bit, but they caught me. And I knew I was caught. I hung my head down, and I said a quick prayer. You know, my relationship with God, even since I was a child, I always had some type of belief. And even in my drunken state, you know, I just, my heart went out to God, and I was like, well, I'm caught. I'm glad it's over. And I really did. I was glad it was over. I thought that was it. I thought that was the last time. Well, it wasn't the last time. I was in and out of prison for the next 10 years. I was given a 10-year sentence, suspended 8. But every time I got out, I couldn't make parole. I'd have a drinking and driving accident. I'd get mad with some girlfriend I was with or what have you. I would get into some trouble. I had some aggravated charges. And I just kept going in and out of prison, in and out of prison. And I actually did the next 9 years in prison. The last time I got out, I only had a year left on parole. And that's the only reason I made parole. I wrecked my truck twice. I had 2 hits.